You know how you see those cheap 15-inch gaming laptops on sale, and after a couple of weeks the screen looks washed out, the frame chokes under a simple FPS, and you end up wishing you'd spent a bit more money? Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I've been watching the gaming laptop market for a while, reading forums, watching build log videos, and trying to separate the hype from the real-world experience. So I want to walk through why the ASUS ROG Zephyrus 16-inch model feels like a smarter buy or why it might still be a miss. First off, the thing that throws most people off when they start looking at specs is the display. A 2.5K 25601600 OLED panel on a laptop is still rare, and the 240Hz refresh rate pushes it into the territory where you can actually see the difference between 60Hz and 144Hz in fast shooters. In my own testing, the deep blacks and punchy colors make darkroom games like Cyberpunk 2077 feel immersive, and the high refresh eliminates motion blur when you crank the settings up. The downside? OLED panels tend to be a bit more power-hungry, so the battery drops from about 80% to 40% after an hour of mixed gaming and streaming. If you plan to game on a coffee shop table for an entire afternoon, you'll need to keep the charger handy. The heart of the machine is an Intel Core Ultra 9285H, a 16-core Arrow Lake chip that sits between a mainstream i7 and a desktop-class i9. In practice, it means you can run the latest titles at high settings while also having enough headroom for video editing or 3D rendering without the laptop screaming for more cores. Paired with the RTX 5070 and 8GB of GDDR7 VRAM, you get smooth frame rates in Elden Ring at 1440p Ultra, and ray tracing stays playable thanks to the newer architecture. The GPU isn't a top-tier RTX 4080, but it hits a sweet spot for 16-inch laptops high enough to future-proof you for a couple of years, yet not so power-hungry that the thermals go off the rails. Thermals are the hidden trade-off you rarely see on spec sheets. The Zephyrus uses ASUS's active aerodynamic system, which spreads the heat across the chassis with a couple of whirring fans that stay relatively quiet until you push the machine past 90°C. In a 30-minute marathon of Valorant on max settings, the fans ramp up to a low hum and the chassis stays just warm enough to be comfortable on your lap. The catch is that under sustained loads, think 2-hour Red Dead Redemption 2 sessions, the GPU will throttle a few percent as the cooling reaches its limit. Most reviewers note that the throttling is minor, but if you're a competitive player who needs every frame, you'll feel it. Now, let's talk storage and memory. 16GB of LPDDR5X at 7467 MHz is plenty for modern games and multitasking, and the 1TB NVMe SSD feels fast enough to load worlds in seconds. The laptop, however, does not offer a second RAM slot or an easy way to swap out the SSD. If you anticipate needing more than 1TB for a massive library of AAA titles, you'll have to rely on external drives. ASUS includes a 2TB USB-C external SSD in the bundle, which is a nice gesture, but that still means an extra piece of hardware on your desk. For most gamers who keep a curated library and use cloud saves, the internal drive will be fine, but power users should factor in the lack of internal expandability. Connectivity is where the Zephyrus feels surprisingly modern. 2 USB-A 3.2 ports, a USB-C 3.2, a USB-C 4.0 that supports DisplayPort and charging, HDMI 2.1, and a Thunderbolt 4 header give you all the ways to hook up a 4K monitor, an external GPU dock, or a fast external SSD. The Wi-Fi 7 module is future-proof, delivering lower latency in crowded networks, a real benefit if you stream while you game. The only oddity is the placement of the HDMI port on the left side, which can be inconvenient if you're used to right-handed setups, but it's a minor ergonomic quirk. Who should actually buy this machine? If you're a serious gamer who also dabbles in content creation, say, editing YouTube videos, streaming on Twitch, or doing light 3D work, the Zephyrus gives you a portable powerhouse that can handle both without needing a separate workstation. The OLED screen makes color grading less of a guessing game, and the RTX 5070's ray tracing cores give you that extra visual fidelity you can brag about on stream. It also fits nicely into a commuter lifestyle. The 16-inch chassis is slimmer than most 17-inch beasts, and the backlit keyboard with perky RGB lets you game in low-light environments without straining your eyes. On the flip side, skip it if you're looking for a budget-friendly entry point, if battery life is your top priority, or if you plan to upgrade RAM or storage down the line. The price point sits well above the $1,500 mark, and while you're getting premium components, you're